I'm so scared to be connected to him because if I was connected to him, maybe he would die too. So I don't know why. I don't know. And it wasn't a lack of connection at all. Like you hear people saying that they couldn't connect with their baby. It wasn't that. I was so connected to him and I was terrified.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Birth Story podcast. If you are joining for the first time today, I'm your host, Alexis C. Girl mom, angel mama to one of the sweetest boys in heaven, birth trauma and uterine rupture survivor, and former NICU mama. Here you will have the opportunity to ask and have your burning questions answered by professionals, feel connected to other women's experiences as we normalize the different aspects of this journey we are on as moms. The real and raw moments of healing are shared here as we navigate loss, embrace strength, and find hope again while learning to live after loss. Please note the topics discussed on this podcast are for educational purposes only. Please see your personalized medical professional if you have any questions or concerns that arise from listening, including diagnosis and treatment. Opening up an old wound, I think, too, right? Well, not necessarily old, but an ongoing one.
No, it is. I feel like it could be considered an old wound
Yeah.
at this point. I mean, yeah, for sure, it's always there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a long time ago.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. This is so special and bumping it up sooner since I'm catching a plane here pretty soon.
Thank you for having me. Feels like it's kind of an honor to be able to like be here and talk with you. And obviously our journeys were not ones that like you want to be brought together by, but here
Mm-hmm.
we are.
But nonetheless, I'm very thankful for the day I received your contact info and was connected with you. And you've helped me through so much over the last 2.5 years. And you always have the best words of wisdom. So I'm excited to be able to share you with
Oh,
everyone
thanks. It's
else.
nice to hear that. You know, it's funny. I think I said that to you before that like you don't really realize in the moment that maybe I said the wrong thing. You still think that like even though you've been through it, you're still worrying that maybe you say the wrong thing or that somebody took what you said the wrong way. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it when someone reaches out and they're like, "Hey, you helped me so much in that scenario." I'm like, "Really? Did- Well, I'm so glad." But you always kind of like, I guess, well, it's my nature to overthink regardless. But
And I
yeah.
think too, for me personally, there were so many times where people said maybe the wrong thing and not necessarily
Hmm.
something that helped. And so I have a lot of pressure on myself to say the right thing, even though I don't know
Yeah.
what the right thing is. And everyone has a different version of maybe what their right thing is too,
Yeah,
right?
we do, right? Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like some people think that like bringing God into it is, like myself, I usually say something about, you know, my own faith that I found. But I know that lots of people lose it, right? Like, and I also feel like there's like a lot of scenarios where people just say things I think that they think would bring comfort, and it's like you're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you can't say stuff like that. And again, I think that I know there's been like, even like I remember sending my message to you after, yeah, and I just think I probably deleted it and then retyped it 1,000 times to make sure that I like worded it the right way. And I don't think there is any right way when it comes to grief and like because everybody's situation, no matter what the outcome of their loss was, is so different.
You're so right. Well, you show up in such an authentic way, and I think that that is so important. And obviously, like you came back to your faith, and that is so important to you. So for you to share that is like super special. And even if someone kind of went the opposite way, I know for us, we
Hmm.
felt a lot of anger and we kind of,
Hmm.
distanced ourselves from the church and distanced ourselves from maybe our current beliefs because that was the first time that we had ever been failed, even though,
Hmm.
nobody owed us
Yeah.
anything. It
Yeah.
was, a huge, huge shift. And so I think regardless to just show up in your way and in
Hmm.
your like what helped you because whether or not I believe the same thing, I still reflect on what you say, and
Hmm.
eventually you circle back and you're like, "Okay, I remember that one time she said this." And
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
ongoing thing and just to see even looking back in our initial conversations to the conversations maybe you and I have today, they're so different because the last 2.5 years have changed so much,
Hmm.
right? And so yeah, I really do like to reflect back and I think about what you have to say quite often. And I appreciate even the vulnerability of being able to share that because it's not an easy thing, whether or not you
I
send
know.
the first one you type out or the thousandth one you type
Yeah, it
out,
is
right?
actually true though. Like, right? Like when I think like when you've overthought it and just tried to make sure that you say the right thing to make sure that you're like protecting that person's heart and their energy and where they're at. But I actually like am getting to this stage of life that realizing just meeting someone where they're at in their grief, whether it's right now when you're raising your son, right? Like you and I both are like raising sons and we didn't get to raise our first sons. And like meeting you where you're at, where it's like, you're taking him and he's weighing 15 pounds and you're like, hmm, I wonder what, like, I wonder what Cade would have weighed
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
at like that stage. Like I'm watching Mayor do things that I'm like, oh, he's such a boy. Like, and like
So
it
different
is,
from
it's
your
like,
girls, right?
yeah. And it's like, I will forever say that life is bittersweet because I don't know if there's anything more true because like we're constantly chasing joy after loss. I think that we like I say, like we look to the skies. We look for signs. We look for answers, especially in your own circumstance. We look for, I don't know, like I just feel like we're constantly searching. Like,
Yeah, I
and
couldn't
I don't
agree
even
more.
know if we know what we're searching for.
Just something, right? To maybe justify why it happened or
Just make
why the
sense
hell
of
did
the,
it happen?
yeah. Or like justify our hearts, right? Like
Yeah.
people saying, like hearing whispers that people said, well, like she miscarried,
Mhm.
or well, their babies didn't breathe.
Mhm.
They never breathed our air. Or, um, I understand they're sad, but like it's probably time to move on. And
Mhm.
it's like, do you really like understand that there is no moving on from your child dying? Like, and like, I have had miscarriages and I have had a stillbirth and I have had live babies. And each experience was so different and and not something that you like get over.
Yeah.
You move forward. You find a, a new normal and you continue to like live.
Mhm.
But it doesn't change the sting. It doesn't change the fact that that is your reality.
No. I specifically remember somebody saying to me over and over and over again in the exact same conversation of, well, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason.
Ugh.
I'm like, no, there is absolutely no reason. And then this specific individual, very unfortunately, when they started trying to have babies, they had a miscarriage. And I almost wanted to circle back, and obviously I never would, but it's like, okay, well, what's the reason then? Because you said
Right.
it have like what's your reason?
Yeah.
And I was so frustrated for someone who had never even been trying to have kids or anything like that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
now that you've lost, okay, give me the reason because I'm still searching for it. Because you were very
Still
adamant that
searching.
there was a reason.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember when you said, we're fine, we're raising boys now. And I remember when you had Mayor and you were like, I waited 10 years for this boy. I'm
Yeah.
just like,
And
oh,
we did. We
like,
totally did. And like honestly, I'm so, so grateful that I'm grateful for our journey. And I know that people that are in deep loss, and I will willingly say that I remember people saying stuff like that, and it ticks me off.
mm-hmm,
Like bad. Like how could you ever be grateful for this? Um, I am not grateful for our loss. I am grateful that loss was able to help me help other people.
yeah. And it has
And
connected me to so many people, and I am a firm believer that this community of lost moms is like no other.
yeah,
Like, I
it
have
is.
my
And
best
like,
girlfriends and my girlfriend groups, but nothing compares to the love and the support and everything that is within this community that you absolutely never want to be a part of. But
never want to join the club.
no, but the god awful chance that you do, yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. I think it's because people know your heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and even if their experience is something different, like I said to you, I remember after we lost Letley that like we got pregnant wildly easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we got pregnant on our honeymoon right after our wedding. Like I, we thought it would take like probably 6 months because I had been on birth control.
Yeah.
And we literally got back from San Fran, and I think it was like 2 weeks later that I was like, I feel weird. And my first test was negative. I remember feeling sad. And like Jordan was like, why would you feel sad? Like we're not trying, we're not. And I was like, I don't know, I just felt like something changed.
Yeah.
And I think then I waited another week and I took a test and I was like, no way. Like this was way too, it just happened. And it was like, well, you just change, right? You change in that moment. And after we lost him, we were like, I remember we were at the hospital, and I know that probably sounds so crazy, but we were literally asking like, well, when can we try again? We
Mm-hmm.
were we were so ready to be parents. Um, yeah, I was in labor, and we had talked to the doctor just to know like, what does our life look like now? Like what do you mean we first of all that we have to like go through this labor and delivery knowing the outcome, but also like, can we have more kids? And they were like, well, yeah, and I don't even really remember like their timeline more so than like when your heart's ready is kind of
Mm-hmm.
what my doctor had said. And I remember being like to Jordan, well, I'm desperate. Like we need to have another baby immediately. Like I need to heal my heart, and this is my only answer. And again, like I feel like for some reason I needed to go through a different journey than a lot of the other lost moms that I had reached out to. And like I tried so hard to find stories of moms that lost their babies, their first babies, and then had to go through what we had to go through, which ended up being IVF. And it was like the wildest journey because, and I will never say like, oh, parents who had a baby at home were so lucky because, they kept them busy. No, because I know that my friends that have lost their second or third, babies, they, you don't get the chance to grieve openly.
No.
Like you have to protect your other living babies from the deep sorrow of the screaming that I did in the shower that no one was there to hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to protect anybody from my grief. I just grieved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, like to then end up having to do IVF, um, again, sounds so weird to say it this long after, but that struggle has helped me help so many people through infertility. And like infertility is like a whole nother ball game of like torture. And after loss, your period showing up when you did everything right. No alcohol, no caffeine, no, barely exercising, minimalizing your stress level, which again, after loss is like, you get real.
Yeah,
And
it's not
then
possible.
like lining up, like doing all the fertility meds properly, all of the things, and still not getting pregnant. Like it was 22 months, and then we conceived Reeves through IVF. And it was the craziest journey to get there. Like even to the degree that like when we met with the IVF clinic and we talked about all of our options because it wasn't just female factor. There was some male factor stuff that was going on there. Um, it was like we were just in disbelief. Like, what do you mean? Like we got pregnant so easy. And they just said, like we don't know, really truly, we don't know how stress levels affect fertility. And very clearly they affect it like to extreme levels because we were so stressed out. And yet after Finley, well, even after Scout, like we did conceive naturally. So it's like, I don't know, it was a roller coaster for sure of like different variations of like infertility throughout the whole walk.
Yeah, stress is one of those things, but I mean, they say what stress is like a silent killer. Like it
Yeah.
literally suppresses everything in you and takes over absolutely every part of your being, especially something to that magnitude, right? And
Hmm.
whether or not it's conscious or subconscious, like it is always there. Circling back to you saying having living children at home, I never ever got the opportunity to just lay in bed and cry or
Hmm.
not get out of bed. That wasn't an option for me.
Yes.
And when I did sit in my chair, a shell of myself, so emotional, it was my 3-year-old who was wiping my tears
Yeah.
and telling me,
Yeah.
"It's gonna be okay, mommy," and all while asking, "Why did he die? Why
Hmm.
isn't where's my brother? Why is my brother in the sky?" And
Yes. And like never
trying
having an
to
answer.
know. And then I even think, like, that was my first question after he died too, is when can I try again? That's all.
Hmm.
And I remember the doctor looking at me like, "Are you insane? Like, why are you asking me that right now?" But I
But I
did
remember you
so
saying the same thing.
desperate.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and immediately I was on some stillbirth groups, and I'm like, "How long after uterine rupture?" And everyone's like, "Well, talk to
Hmm.
your medical professional." I'm like, "No, obviously I need a happy story." And
Another
I couldn't
story.
find one anywhere. And so that's when I started
Hmm.
sharing my journey, and my inbox was flooded and flooded and flooded of moms. And still to this day, yesterday I got a message. I just had a uterine rupture. Like, what were your guidelines after for trying and this and that? I'm like, it's such a normal thing. And I did get so incredibly desperate. I'm like, I just need this baby.
Hmm.
And now that Case is here, I think one day I'm gonna have to explain to him that yes, you have another brother, an older brother,
Hmm. Oh
and
yeah.
Case is going to have his own set of questions and his
Yeah.
own way of processing it. But he's never met him. Whereas
Hmm.
Jayla held him and kissed him and played with him, and like
Yeah.
for the short time that we got to spend with him. And I think about that all the time, where my mother-in-law said the other day, she goes, "How did you luck out with having two incredible relaxed babies?" I said, "Yeah,
Hmm.
I but it just makes me wonder, like, what would Kate have been like? Would he have been
Right.
like, my crazy
You're,
baby or this and
yeah,
that?" And it's
your bonkers
always,
toddler.
yeah, watching them play, I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh, there should be one more baby here. Like, this isn't
Yeah,
complete."
I
And
know.
I think I could be chasing that completeness for the rest of my life of I just need more
And like
babies.
honestly, I, I here we are, five
Yeah.
babies in, right? Like I
Yeah.
mean, very much we're very done, but um, like had Mayor been a girl, we still would have been extremely done. Like it wasn't. I just I like had said like when we got so. We lost Letley, obviously, so he was our first. And then we
Mhm.
had Reeves, who was a fresh embryo transfer, and Scout, who was a frozen embryo transfer. And then Scout was about 18 months old, I think. And I got pregnant naturally. It was so exciting because it was like, yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
finally. It was like kind of like a redemptive moment. Like, yes, we can do this.
Mhm.
Um, And then I just like I'm very sick while I'm pregnant and I'm very much like aware that I'm pregnant. And just like we went in, I think it was like 6 weeks, 3 days or something. And everything looked great. And I was like, really weird. I must be getting sick next week. Like, hit that 7 week mark and I'll probably be like sick as a dog. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get sick. And I kept telling my friends, I'm like, something's wrong. And Jordan, like, something's wrong. And he was like, oh, and then we went in for the ultrasound and I just like, there was just like a part of me that was like just very, very aware that it was not going to be good news. And so, yeah, the check, um, they're not supposed to say anything, but like I said, like, can you turn the screen on? And she turned the screen on and I was like, okay. And so I called my doctor after and that was a tough one, like, um, a missed miscarriage, right? So like I was 8 weeks pregnant, but they had said that the baby like measured 6 weeks, 5 days. So it was like 2 days after our ultrasound. And so then you have to take medication and essentially labor or miscarry on your own. It's so silent. It's such a silent pain, that one was like, yeah, really, like I would go into more details of like how people around us acted and stuff, but I feel like I'll just like let that stuff go because it's like painful to even like it was kind of like it didn't matter, even though like it was so redemptive for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to try again naturally because I just felt like our track record with natural felt sad.
Yeah.
So we went for a frozen embryo transfer and it went really well. It was in January. And yeah, I think, well, with so that first baby that I miscarried after Scout, my due date was February 22nd. And then we went in and had this embryo transfer. Everything went great. Went for a 7 week scan, looked awesome, and started to have some spotting, which I had never had before. In any of my pregnancies, but so many people do, right?
Yeah.
And like, as a nurse, like it's like something that you say is like, okay, like this is pretty normal. Um, and then there was like a family emergency with Jordan's grandpa, and they all went up to Edmonton, and I had to end up like one of my friends came out, watched our kiddos, and like I was starting to like not just spot, and ended up driving myself in, met with my sister. She came with me. And by the time we got to the hospital, like as I was walking in there, it's just like I was bleeding, like pooling into my shoes.
Mm.
And it was devastating. Like that one was so, 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 so traumatic, like wildly traumatic. And um, I feel like I don't even really know where I was going with this story, like about fertility and infertility and loss. Like the fact that each one, like I say, is so different. But um, I remember after that one, it was COVID hit right after. And also, it was February 22nd when I miscarried that baby. So
Oh
it was
my
on the
goodness.
day that I was supposed to have, like my due date from my
Yeah.
first miscarriage was the day that I miscarried our second baby. And I was like, I'm done. We got to be done. Like
Mm-hmm.
our hearts, like my heart. And so COVID hit like a month later, and it was so isolating. Um, yeah, it was actually kind of crazy. Obviously, we all know that it was like such a wild time, but when you said that your kids were like the people that helped you, or like when, like with Jayla, that she was
Mm-hmm.
like who was wiping your tears. I had started this workout, the class, and it was like very much like deep healing. Like you do like these crazy, like, like when you get up from a burpee and like move so much energy.
Yeah.
And the kids like after would be like, Mom, are you okay? And I'd just be sitting there bawling because I was so sad. It was just like, that was three. I had two babies in my arms and I had lost three at that point, and it was like, come on,
Mm-hmm.
how? How are we here? And yeah, it was in that moment that I basically like gave up because, well, I was like, I felt sad that my kids had to see those moments, those deep, deep sadness moments. And even like, again, after we lost Letley, when Jordan would leave for work, like when he decided that it was time for him to go back to work, my sister would drive to Irma and climb into bed with me because I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So I think at that point I was like, I can't do this to anybody else either. You know, like our family at that point was like, everybody was just sad. We were sad. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I was like, you know what? We're blessed. Like, we've got these two girls and they were like full of life and wonderful, wonderful little humans that it was like, okay, enough is enough, you know, like let it go. And so, yeah, I just continued to kind of do those workouts and do a lot of what I considered deep healing. And then COVID hit, and then Jordan was home from work, and I think it was April. I found out that we were pregnant again. And in that, we had done blood work. I had done blood work after that second miscarriage because I was like, listen, we called the fertility clinic. Something is wrong.
Yeah.
With the girls, they had just put me on aspirin throughout my pregnancy just in case because we had figured out that Letley had a clot in his
Mm-hmm.
cord. And again, I feel like with autopsies, um, that's another thing all in itself, right? Like as a parent, to have to go that route is devastating, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't something genetic, I guess,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So they said like we couldn't tell for sure whether that clot was postmortem or before, right? Like if it was the absolute cause, but that they really felt like it was. So they put me on baby aspirin, and so I took baby aspirin with those two miscarriages and nothing. But then they did the blood work that they needed to do before, and then it was kind of like a weird, anyways, a medical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they ended up diagnosing me with antiphospholipid syndrome. So, and lots of other nurses like know it as Hughes syndrome. But yeah, I um ended up on like a basically like a heparin, like a injected um blood thinner.
Anticoagulant. Yep.
Yeah. And really truly like a lot of my anxiety throughout that pregnancy was like lifted because for some reason I thought it was just the answer. And then we ended up with her having like a heart arrhythmia and whatever. It was like we never didn't make it through a pregnancy without like stress, but she was here. I had like the most beautiful healing birth with Finley. We did not know her gender.
Was that a hard
And
one when
my,
she was born?
you know what? I was so confident that she was a boy. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know why. And it wasn't just wishful thinking. It was just like, again, I had kind of felt like God was really like pushing me to have one more baby because I at that point had just been like, no, we got to stop. And then we decided that if it happened, great. If it didn't, so be it. I didn't want to have any more loss. I didn't want to experience any more loss.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, we both just really thought that like this was it. We were going to have one more baby and it would be a boy and we would get to raise a son. And I know that like everybody processes things differently. But you know yourself, right? Like you would have been so happy if Case was a girl, but like I prayed so hard while you were pregnant that you had a little boy. I was like, come on, because I know that feeling of just like yearning to raise not who you lost, but what you lost
Yeah.
gender wise. It sounds so silly to like say it out loud, but it's like any lost parent I've talked to, it's just so evident. And
Yeah.
I do have some friends that didn't get to do that, and not that they're like devastated that they have all the same gender that you know what I mean? Like if we would have had all girls, we wouldn't have been devastated by any
Yeah.
means. It's just different. You ache for it in a weird way.
And it's a gender disappointment too, even if you haven't experienced loss, right? Like
Hmm.
what they say. not a golden family, whatever they call it when you're raising a girl and a
Oh,
boy, right? The perfect
million dollar
family or million
family,
dollar family.
whatever. Yeah.
Oh, and so I know a lot of my friends, specifically they have all boys, but they were like, yeah, like we really did want a girl. And then I remember back, so I worked at a clinic, we had an ultrasound machine, and just for fun, we were kind of scanning, and I was getting a little curious as to what the gender was. And then he was like, well, like, I'm not really seeing a penis. So maybe it's a girl. And I was like, okay. So then from that moment, I was just like, oh, I'm a girl mom. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I only knew girls, blah, blah, blah. And then when we went for his scan and then opened our sheet, like, I was very obviously in shock because I was so
Mhm.
set on it being a girl. And I was having, but I would have dreams that I was VBACing a boy and
Mhm.
just things like that, and I was like, "Oh my god, Jayla, like, you're gonna have a brother." And I didn't
Mhm.
believe it for the longest time, and I had to go for a rescan because he wasn't cooperating with his face, and I was like, "Okay." She's like, "Oh, so you're having a boy, hey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna need you to prove that because I don't think I
Yeah.
remember." And she put the probe on my stomach, and I just remember seeing this willy. I
Yeah.
was like, "If you got it,
Yeah.
it's on it, buddy."
Yeah.
And then when like, I was so scared to be a boy mom, I didn't know what to do, and it was so foreign to me, but then he was born, and it's like, I've known you my entire life. Like,
Mhm.
you've always been a part of our family that I didn't even know was going to exist, right?
Mhm.
And then after, I desperately just needed a baby,
Mhm.
but really, really, really needed that boy
Mhm.
again. Like, what?
Yeah.
And the boys are so different in their, like, they have some qualities obviously that are the
They,
same,
yeah.
but they're their own little boys. And it's just,
Yeah.
sometimes I wish they would be a bit more similar, but that's putting a lot of pressure on Case, obviously, to,
Mhm.
and he's not his brother. But that's
Yeah.
really hard because I know he will never replace Cade and it'll never take it away. But I think my human nature was a little bit that it was going to kind of fill that void, but it doesn't. And
It
so
doesn't.
I had to work on that for a long time, being like, you are not your brother. You are not replacing. That is way too much pressure to have on you.
Mhm.
I'm just going to enjoy you as the little boy you are.
Yeah.
And like, even when we had him, I remember being pregnant with Cade and being like, I don't see myself being able to do this two more times, one more time for sure. And that was well before he passed. And then with Case coming at 28 weeks,
Mhm.
I was like, this is not how I wanted my final story to be.
No.
I did not want to have a NICU baby. I did not want to be in a postpartum unit without my baby and all of these factors. And literally just before I came down here, I was joking with my husband. I'm like, okay, do you want to put a baby in my belly? He was like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't feel done. That is not how my
Yeah.
story wanted to end.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like you said, I didn't want to lose again. I am putting myself in a position to get extremely hurt again.
Mhm.
And that in itself is a huge risk that some days I'm willing to jump in with 2 feet, and other
Mhm.
days I'm like, "I have 2 babies
Absolutely.
here with me.
Yeah. I get
Do
it.
I wanna do that?"
I'm like the worst person to ask. I am the worst person to ask
I know.
because I've always said like, no, like you'll feel done when you're
Mhm,
done. And
mhm,
truly, after Finley, like, and all my friends know, I was so done. Like,
mhm.
and like you talk about that gender disappointment. Honestly, like, so like I say, Finley's birth was so healing. Like, went in for my induction. I can't make it past 37 weeks. I mentally turn into, I go crazy.
Yep,
Letley died at 37 and 2, and I just can't, I will not let myself get that close.
yep,
Um, so I went in for my induction at 37 weeks, and it was just like, aside from the fact that we were wearing masks, Jordan's always so annoyed when he sees the birth video. He's like, what were we doing? Yeah,
just following the rules, baby.
I know but her birth was like, literally, I think we like pulled the cervidil and they were like, okay, let's put an IV in and we can start the drip. And I was like, okay, sure. And then I had my doula with me. Shout out to Christy. She's wonderful. But, yeah, and my nurse, oh, she was so wonderful. I don't even know if you should say names, but she was just so encouraging. She's like, Bodi, if you don't want the IV in yet, like, or if you don't want to start the drip yet, get moving. Like, let's do this. Let's see if your body can take off. And it did. it took off beautifully. And there was this moment, and I just say that it was like Letley preparing me, God preparing me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like was kind of like laying on the bed like with my head over the top and just riding the waves of all of those contractions. And I was like, I need everybody to leave. And they were like, we can't, I can't leave. And I was like, I just need to cry. Like I just needed to
Mm-hmm.
cry. And I couldn't figure it out. And it was like that surrender because I knew, I think in my heart, I was like, this is a little girl and it's all gonna be okay and everything is okay. And literally like pushed her out and there's like a video of her on my chest and I was like, can somebody tell me? Can, can somebody tell me? Is it like and I like I was like so happy that she was there and like I did it without any epidural, anything. Like everything went just so beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that in itself, when you've been through birth trauma, is the healing moment of it was so like incredibly euphoric. And then it's still, you can see in the video, like me, and like I was like, I want Jordan to tell me, Jordan, is it a girl? Is it a girl? Because I was feeling. And he was like, he couldn't see. And I like, and then the nurse was like, girl, and you can hear my doctor in the background, like, yes, it's a girl. Congratulations, you guys, you've got a healthy little girl. And I
Oh.
like breathed her in, like pulled her in so close and like, gave her a kiss and was like, it's okay, you're here. Like it was like that moment of
Oh.
like, oh, okay, we're raising girls. We're supposed to
Yeah.
raise these girls. And yeah, then like I say, like we were so done, Alexa. Like we were so done. Done. Jordan was booked for a vasectomy in like she was born in July and he was booked for the vasectomy in July. She was born in January and he was booked for the vasectomy in July. And he had one night like said like I had this really crazy dream. And like he doesn't usually remember them. I'm like, really, what was that about? And he was like I was walking into a hospital room and they were like, you missed the birth. You have a son. And he said that he like dropped in the dream, like
Oh
it's just
my
and
God.
like and I had those dreams too of like this very, very strong dream of this little boy. And so I think it was like a month before and I was like, I don't know. Like maybe you don't go for the vasectomy. And he was like, well, I guess we could wait until the new year. And so we waited and we got pregnant naturally again in October. And as you know, you were there the next day.
Oh my
He
God.
he was born. He was born healthy and wonderful, and I was a disaster. I was a complete disaster. My birth was all, I don't want to say awful. It was not what I anticipated because I had this healing, wonderful birth. My induction was pushed off. I was so anxious. I needed to get there and have him out. I needed him to be born alive so badly that I just was like, I had gone like crazy that day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he got like stuck at his shoulders. I didn't, I couldn't process like what had happened. And then I was, had a bit of a hemorrhage and just like, I was so connected to him. I'm so scared to be connected to him because if I was connected to him, maybe he would die too. So I don't know why. I don't know. Like, and it wasn't a lack of connection at all. Like like you hear people saying that they couldn't connect with their baby. It wasn't that. I was so connected to him and I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you were there. He was so like he was jaundiced and he
Mm-hmm.
just wouldn't relax under the light. And it was just like, I was such a disaster just trying to like get home. I just wanted to be at home with my girls and their brother. And it was like, it felt like I was like terrified that I didn't get to just bring him home
Mm-hmm.
because it, but like that, the walk of leaving a hospital without your baby I will forever say that it is the most painful thing any mom, parents should ever do. Like we made legacy boxes after Letley died, with just all of the things that I felt would be like something that they could at least fill their arms with. Um, I don't even know. I remember getting into the car, driving and saying, I need you to pull over and just throwing up because, and it wasn't like nausea from birth. It was the fact that there was a car seat in the back, like that type of like everything was wrong.
Hmm.
Everything about it was wrong. So that desperate need to bring Mayor home, like just jaundice itself, like something simple that I had been through with the girls. I was like, I need to get home. I need to get out of here. And I need Jordan with me. And it was just like, I don't know, overwhelming sense of like, he has to be okay. And he was fine. But my brain was not.
I remember saying that over and over again with Case too to his doctor. I'm like, just make sure this baby has to be okay. Whatever you do, he just has to be. I was laying on the OR bed, hysterical. I'm like, he just has to be okay.
Well, I
That was
remember
the
you
only,
calling me or texting me
yeah.
to say, listen, my water broke. And I was like, nope, no, it didn't. There is no way. There's no way. And then like, it kind of seemed like you were going to end up being there. Like, till 30 weeks at
Hmm.
least,
Oh,
that
I
like
was
you'd be
full
able
set
to,
in my head. 32 weeks was the goal.
yep,
And it
yep,
was like, it wasn't happening before then because my body is scheduled.
yep,
It shouldn't have even broke at 27 weeks. Like, I only
no,
delivered at 40 weeks unless I was induced.
right.
And yeah, it was such a shock. When you said about um me being at the hospital, I literally just had like silent tears just streaming down my face. I was like, I remember that day in report. And obviously I was back working in the same hospital. You delivered in the same
Hmm.
room. Cade died, you were in the same um well, you were in a different room. Obviously we were full at
Yeah.
that time, but and in the report room and they were like, "Are you sure you can take her?" I'm like, I have to. Something is
Yeah.
telling me I have to be her nurse."
Yeah.
And I remember walking into your room and like getting you to sit on the bed and just even drop into my own knees and just like
Hmm.
crying with you. And you're just
Yeah.
like, "It's a boy." Like, I waited 10 years. I'm like, hell yeah, you did, And
Yeah.
I remember Mayor being so upset in his little isolette with the lights and
Yeah.
trying to calm him down. And um, yeah, that was such an emotional day.
Yeah. And I just remember you saying like, Bodi, if you just need to hold him, then hold him because like that
Hmm.
night nurse, nothing against him. He's a wonderful person. It was just a bad situation. I was so full of postpartum hormones. Poor guy. Truly, you were like, just hold him then.
Yeah.
Like, he's your baby. Like, this is okay. We'll just put this on him then. And like, okay, like that's all I wanted to do. And
It's
when
a
you walked
desperate
in, I
need that
just
takes
remember,
over. Like, it takes
yeah,
over
it did.
everything.
Yeah, it does. It's so like well, it's innate, right? We're
Yeah.
like, we're their mom.
Mhm.
And yeah, I remember you walking in and being like, thank you. Like it was just like somebody who got me,
Mhm.
who like really actually, but then I remember apologizing to you after because I was like, Cade was the most beautiful baby. Like truly, his hair, his cheeks, he was just everything. I remember when you sent me pictures, and I was just like, oh, I remember after Letley was born, my really good friend Siobhan was with us, um, kind of as like our doula back then, but
Mhm.
she was an RN, and she came to be with us. I remember her mentally preparing us. Like I had never seen anybody who had passed away before, right? Like never in my life, and being terrified. Well, what will he look like? Or what will the baby look like? Because we didn't know what we were having. And she explained everything. And then Letley came out perfect. He was like, he was so beautiful. I don't even know how else to explain him other than, I remember Siobhan saying, you can rest assured that he was born an angel. And he was so beautiful. And when you sent me pictures, of Cade being like, another angel. Like, and I know that sounds so silly, but he was so perfect, which again shows all of the things that we've talked about lining up, right? Like he was perfect. And Mayor was so big cheeked and fuzzy haired. And I was so stressed after that you had to experience. And I know it's different, like for some reason, like when you know that somebody else has felt the pain that you've felt, you don't have that same sting. But I also knew that you were getting like closer to wanting, like I knew how bad you wanted another baby in general and that you couldn't yet because you were following all the guides because you had to. And I remember just being like worried that he would trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it's just so funny, like lost moms always keeping that person in their heart during those moments. And it was interesting how it lined up for us to be together in those moments when like I really just needed somebody who like understood that I was like, I just need to bring the baby home. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that this is jaundice and I know that this is like not life or death, but I need to get out of here.
Yep.
And always say day 4. I think that like my milk comes in and comes out my eyes. Like I can't stop crying and it's always the day I have to go back in and deal with jaundice. Um, grateful to not do that again.
Yeah, no
But,
kidding.
but truly, I am the wrong person to ask, as I say, because we listened to that feeling inside of us, and I will forever say listen to that feeling because as much as Mayor's birth is still like an effect on me, mostly because I just like feel like I can't really remember it because everything went, they lost like couldn't hear his heart rate and it went down so low for it felt like 2 minutes. I know that it wasn't, and my nurse was absolutely who I needed in there at those moments. And she turned me on my side, and Christy was there, and Jordan was there, and they were all talking to me. Um, but like I couldn't hear his heartbeat anymore, and the nurse was shoving the little toggle things in, and there was that like very brief, and it didn't feel brief, moment of full panic. Like his heart rate was, you couldn't hear it. And then when you could hear it, it was like, "Duh, duh, 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 duh," and then
Mm-hmm.
came back up. And I think in those moments, again, it was something that gave me that understanding for the panic that people like you and a lot of other, like, mom lost friends went through in a very traumatic moment that you should never have had to experience because I got to hear it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear his heart rate come back up again and birth him, and he was alive. And I really, in those moments, thought like, we're losing him, and we're gonna lose him too because he's a boy, and like, and my brain just like couldn't function after. Like even like Jordan was like, so what's his name? Are we gonna call him Mayor? Or, like I'm gonna let everybody know. Like, or like, can I tell people that he's here? And I was like, no, I don't know. I remember just being like, what's happening? And my nurse saying like, you are hemorrhaging a little bit. We have to give you this med, do these things. And I was like, okay. And I remember just being like, is he here? Like he was crying and he was on my chest. And actually, it was one of your friends, I think, that was the nurse that was like my baby nurse. She was so wonderful.
Brienne.
I kept
Yeah.
saying to her, I was like, is he flat? Like, because she was like, oh, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? And I remember being like, is he okay? Like, and you can see it in the video too. I kept saying like, well, is he too flat? Is he too flat? And they were like, no, no, he's good. He's good. And for some reason in my brain, this little squirmy, warm, cozy little boy wasn't going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would he? Because Letley didn't, and it made no sense that Letley didn't.
Yep.
And it made no sense that when we went in that day and they said there's no heartbeat, and I'm screaming at them, do a cesarean. He was just alive. He was just alive at 7:30. Like I felt him move. He was moving this morning. And at 9 a.m. he wasn't moving, and I'm like, okay, something feels weird. And I did all the things. I did the orange juice. I laid on my side. I
Mm-hmm.
did all of the things. And I had to kick count because I had like yeah, I had a two vessel cord, and like we were watching for in utero growth restriction and stuff. So like, and I
Mm-hmm.
had went into labor at 36 weeks with him. 36 weeks. Everything was so like, well, why am I in labor? Like, and they said just go on bed rest for another week. If he comes after 37 weeks, he can deliver early. And I was like, okay. And they said, I think you'll be back later like tonight though, and we'll probably ship you to Edmonton. I was like, okay. And my labor stopped. And forever, Lex, I will be like, why didn't my body just get him out?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why did I listen? Why did it matter to me if I delivered earlier in the city? He was 36 weeks. He was fine.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
so
he would have
hard.
lived,
Yeah.
right? Like you go over it a million times. And like, I mean, we're just coming into February, which is what I call Letley's month. My body knows the grief before I can even process it.
Yeah.
And like, again, that whole feeling, and I think that's why I was like a little bit apprehensive when you first asked about doing this, was because Letley will be turning 12 in
In tw-
heaven this
I
month.
know. In 12 days.
And I always like think people are probably like, why is she still talk about this? Why is this still, like something that is like a main, like if people say, oh, you guys have 4 kids. I'm like, well, we actually still, we have 5, one's in heaven. Because you know what? He deserves that. He
Yeah.
was real and he was perfect. He was 6 pounds, 13 ounces. Perfect. He was the most handsome baby. It was just he deserves to still be considered their big brother. And you're talking about how will Case connect with Case? He never got to meet him. He met him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember Reeves once having a really cool dream about Letley showing her this locker, and inside of it was these wings. And like she never talks about it now. Like she's close to 10, and she rarely brings Letley up. Scout always brings him up. Finley just knows that she has a big brother. Um, but yeah, Reeves had this dream one time about this little boy, and she said like she knew it was Letley, and that he was like bringing her around and showing her all of these things, and then it was this one last thing that he wanted to show her, and it was like his wings that he kept in the locker. And I just remember being like, whoa, like, and also, like when I was pregnant, he always danced to country music. I hate country music, and Jordan loves it. And so he gave me the gift of loving country music. And I mean, I needed to because I have 3 little cowgirls. Um, but I remember one time showing Reeves, like, there was a song Wanted by Hunter Hayes.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
was one of the songs he always danced to in my belly. And I said to Reeves, like, this is one of the songs that your brother danced to in my belly. And we were driving home from Wainwright, I think, and we turned it on and like didn't think anything of it. And then I turned around and she was bawling. And I was like, what's wrong? And she said, I can feel him
Oh my
through the
gosh.
music. And so when you worry about like what connection Cade or Case will have with Cade,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's there. I don't know how else to explain it. It's there. And I think that's why I continue to talk about him. I think that's why, like, when, like, the more I thought about it, and, like, of course, one of my best friends, Kara, was like, let them. Let, like, really, truly let people wonder why you still talk about it or whatever. And she's like, they're not who experienced it. They were not, they were not his mom or dad or sibling or whatever. And if they have an opinion about it, who cares? Let them. Because really, truly, why should it matter? And I
I
was
always
like,
say
you're
if you
right.
can't understand, consider yourself lucky.
Exactly.
Because if you
Exactly.
could understand, that means you've been through it, right?
Hmm.
I yeah, kids are so connected to that kind of stuff, right? And
They are.
Case came out with like that little stork bite on the back of
Yeah.
his neck, and I remember when I was pregnant with him and seeing a bunch of posts about it and stuff, and I didn't look for a very long time because I'm like, if he
Yeah.
doesn't have one, I'm gonna be crushed. And then
Ah,
one day, can't even remember what I was doing, but the nurse must have been doing something and flipped him over, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh my god, there it is!" And just the other day, I was looking, and I'm like, I just imagine him giving him a kiss and being
Yeah.
like, "Okay, you know,
Yeah.
go take care of her, mom."
Yeah. Yeah. Truly, right? Like, I think consistently, like, there was obviously a plan to why we didn't find out. Like, we knew what we were having with reasons to. We never let anybody know, but I needed to know. I didn't want any surprises.
Yeah,
And then with Finley, we just felt very much like we didn't want to know. And I think had I known that she was a girl, I would have probably like gotten rid of all of the baby stuff and really like planned to be done. Where because she was this girl and she was so healing and wonderful until she was 2, um, yeah, like we like felt very much like we can do this again.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I do think that they know them. I think that they get to meet them before they come here. And I don't know like how it all works, but I feel like
I have to believe in that though.
me
And I
too.
think
And
it's
maybe that's
personal preference, right? But I
yeah,
totally
yeah,
believe. I've been to the medium. I've met Kate
yeah.
through her, and like I tried to go subsequent times and it'll never be like the first time, and so I think
Hmm.
I've decided to be done that portion of
Hmm.
the journey, but I went on his 6-month
Yeah,
birthday,
yeah,
and it was like my reading was supposed to be an hour. It was like 2.5 hours long. She's like, "This little boy just like won't stop. Like, he has so much
yeah.
to say to you." And I remember her saying to me things like Paul had stepped out of our hospital room, and so it was Kate and I was saying things to him, and she repeated back to me word for word what
Uh,
I had said to him in that room. And I was like,
hmm.
nobody else on this planet
Yes,
knows that I had that conversation with him.
yeah,
I truly believe that their little spirits stick around, like,
yeah. I
and
think they reside in heaven, but I feel like
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like our loved ones are with us in our
yeah,
hearts, right? Like I feel like they're with us. I think like I truly believe in heaven. I
yeah,
mean, that's why I believe what I believe. So I know, I mean, God is good in our home. God is good. And even though we've been through all of it, and that's where I kind of stick to, but
mm-hmm,
heaven is like gonna be dreamy. Like, can you
yeah,
imagine? Like, I mean, I never really think of it that way, and maybe it's silly. Like, I think that, like, with my miscarriages, it made me more mad than sad.
mm-hmm,
So mad. Oh, so mad.
yeah. I think not having a reason too, like, why does it happen,
Well,
you
and
know?
like everything was like, like everything was perfect, and it's
Mm-hmm,
like I know they can only see certain things at that point in time, but it's just like, why? Why did I have to experience this? Why did we have to go through this when it was so, I don't know, it was redemptive to be
mm-hmm.
pregnant again, to do all those things. It's like, but then you experience more loss, and
It's
I
such
don't
a
know.
devastating thing to me because in my mind, I believe like I've experienced the absolute worst of the worst.
I
I
don't
should
need to
not be
experience it again.
allowed to have anything else happen. And then
I
even in some of
honestly,
the stillbirth groups, they're like, I've had 3 stillbirths. I'm like, sorry?
no,
No, you shouldn't even have
no,
one.
no.
Like,
See, and like that is the stuff that like if I saw that, I was like, I can't, I can't go any further. I can't like read any further. I can't because no way, no way. And I really truly like, I think I actually like, well, like I always talked about my losses because I felt like somebody else was experiencing it and not having conversation and suffering silently.
yeah.
So I brought attention to miscarriages, infertility, all of those things throughout the last 12 years.
Mhm.
And when it came to my first miscarriage, I remember writing that. Like, I believed that I wouldn't, like, I mean, like, I was always so worried throughout my pregnancies that I wouldn't get to bring them home. But I was just like, no, I've been through it. We lost Letley. No way. And yet, two more times did I have to experience loss. And at a different level, I will never compare the two scenarios because it was just so different. Your
Yeah.
heart aches, you feel angry, you go through all of the motions, you will forever wonder, but it was different.
And I
Losing
remember
Letley
too,
was
yeah. Like you said, these boys were so perfect when they were born and we got to see them, and it made absolutely no sense to me that this perfect little boy, not a single thing was unperfect on him.
no.
It just looked like he was sleeping, and I remember him laying there and just, like, waiting to feel his breath on me. Being like,
Oh, right.
why haven't I felt that yet?" And then I've never experienced a miscarriage, but I just think that it would be hard in many ways, but in the
Yeah.
sense that you never got to hold this baby, you never got to
No, and
even
those
like,
are
you
all
can
the
have a
things that you
picture
wish
of them in
for,
your
right?
head,
Yeah. Yeah, and
right?
those are all the things like, and that's why I've said to people that are like, well, I know I can't compare my situation to yours. And I was like, listen, a loss is a loss.
Mhm.
There's people who have chemical pregnancies and they're devastated. And then,
Yeah,
like, you be devastated. I
yeah,
mean, you waited years to see those two lines.
mhm. I'm
It's
like,
not
most of
fair.
us dream about it since we're little girls, like, when JLo was 3 or 4, she's like, "I can't wait to be a mom one day." And,
Oh,
like, which was so special because I still to this moment, I sit here and say this, I'm so scared that when she gets to if she decides to have kids, that she'll be so scared because she only knows, her brother died, and then
mhm,
her other brother was born early, and then she was forced to leave him in the hospital for 2 months away from
mhm.
her mom, and I'm like, "You
Yeah,
don't know," whereas with
yeah.
her, we walked into the hospital, we sectioned because she had unreliable heart rate and meconium, and she was here, and we went home, and it's
Mhm,
like she doesn't know that yet,
mhm.
and so part of the reason I feel like I need another one. Like,
Yeah,
you need but there's no guarantees, and, um
there isn't, but I also feel
no.
like this probably sounds silly, but that feeling when you're pregnant after you've waited a really long time, like you
Mhm,
had to wait a long time to be able to get pregnant with Case. I can't wait till this baby's here. I can't wait.
mhm,
I can't wait. How many times did you say that?
mhm,
To
many.
heal your heart, right? Like, and you, like, not that they're here to heal our hearts. I think that people have this like weird thought that like that's what we really believe, but like these babies just to heal us.
Mhm.
No, they
I
heal
just needed him
perfectly.
physically here, so
Yeah.
I could see you breathing, I could see you doing all
Mhm.
of these things, and I didn't even get to like, we didn't find out what he was either. I knew in the very being, the very fiber of my soul that he was a boy. People would be like,
Yeah.
"Do you know what you're having?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a boy." They're like, "Oh, you found out?" I'm like, "No."
Mhm.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
"It's a boy." Like, if he
Yeah.
came out a girl, I don't know what I would have done. I would have
Mhm.
been like, I'm never wrong in my
Yeah.
genders, and I was so
Yeah.
set, but because he was early, I was so stressed about all of these other factors, I didn't even get to
Oh
take
yeah.
in them, like, that he was a boy. It
No.
was and I made
And
the mistake, they asked, "What do you think he is? What do you think baby is?" I said, "A boy." And then instead of them when he came out saying, "It's a boy," they just said, "You were right, mama." So I never heard,
Mhm.
"You have a boy, you
Mhm.
have a
Yeah.
son." And
Yeah.
yeah, it took me a long time to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh."
Yeah. I
Like
also feel like he's so like in that, I feel like you were like, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. I
mhm,
can't wait till he's here. I can't wait till I can feel his chest move up and down. I
mhm.
can't wait till I can feel his breath on my inside of my neck. And he was like, my mom can't wait.
Yeah.
Gotta get there.
Make you a little stink.
Right? And so I feel like there's this part of you that's healed
Mhm.
that would be like, okay, you can wait. You can come when it's time for you to come.
Yeah.
And that, like that your body would be like, okay, we've done this before. We know how to do this. It's
Yeah.
different now. we've done it differently each time.
Yeah, I say if I had this crystal ball that showed
Hmm.
me exactly what his birth was going to be, when he was going to come, that he was going to be okay, I could have waited like forever.
Hmm.
But because there was no guarantees, and then there was all these other factors, but even Jayla will say, because he's a mouth breather and he's like congested all the time. And so you'll hear him and she goes, I just love listening to him breathe. I'm like,
Hmm.
girl, same. Like, I don't even think you
Oh,
know the
Jayla.
magnitude of like
Yeah.
how much I agree with you. And I remember saying to one of my best friends when she was her little girl was born a couple weeks before Cade, and saying to her, like, how do you know you're done? Because they were like point blank, we are done, we are getting snipped, we are whatever. And I'm like, how do you know that? And she was like,
Hmm.
we just do. I'm like, okay, so I must not be done. And then leaving the hospital with that stupid box. God, I was
Hmm.
angry. But I have his handprints, I have his footprints, I have his hair. But I just remember
Yeah.
being so
Angry.
flippin' angry. And like you said, that
Oh.
walk out of the hospital, obviously I worked there for many years before I delivered him, so I knew that corridor
Hmm.
like the back of my hand. And they had cleared the hallway of absolutely everything. Every single door was closed. I was in a wheelchair. He was in my arms and just being pushed out and listening to that stupid elevator open
Hmm.
and nobody wanting to make eye contact. I remember it was my best friend's dad works for the funeral home, and he was at the end of the hallway just like sobbing. I
Yeah.
remember making eye contact with him and being like, I can't give you this baby. Like
And
they had
I don't.
packed.
I still don't know how
Yeah.
we. I don't. I don't. We had to walk out of my one of my best friends. Jer is was our funeral director,
Hmm.
and he was away. He couldn't come get Letley, so one of his like trusted friends was gonna come get him. I have no idea how we walked out of that room. I have no idea.
No.
Like, and I'm still devastated. We didn't
Hmm.
keep him with us for the night. I
Hmm.
don't. We were so afraid of him changing and doing all these things, and now they have things like cuddle cots and options.
Hmm.
And those were things that 12 years ago were not an option. I do not know how we walked out of that room. I still, I don't, I remember we read him a poem.
Hmm.
I think about like if love could have saved you. And it was
You'll be
like,
alive forever.
yeah. And it was like, how did we, how did we walk out of that room? So I have a very good friend too that talks about similar to you that they had to literally like physically give her to the funeral home, and like her being my friend's baby
Yeah.
and you having to give Kate. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like we had to walk out of that room you guys had to give, and it's just like that's your baby,
Yeah. If I wouldn't have been
this
in a
human.
wheelchair, you wouldn't have gotten me to the funeral van. And I went right out and they were like saying like, okay, you can put him in the van. And I was like, well, I'm also getting in the van. Like, what are you talking about? And my husband had to take it from my hands and place him in the basket. Cause I was like, I can't.
You
Like
can't.
I'm going to bring him home at this point. Like that was my baby. And I'm not sure a lot of people think that way, but he would have still been here. Like it was so weird to me.
I know it. Well,
Like I didn't
your
miss a
brain
beat.
can't.
No, I
I
couldn't
know.
comprehend. And they kept asking me, they're like, the funeral home keeps calling, wondering when they can come. I'm like, how am I supposed to make that call? How am I supposed to
It's
tell you that it's time to come get him? It's never time.
never
Like
time.
you're not
No,
coming.
I know. I still like my biggest regret. One, so silly, but like I had taken a picture of him on my phone with just his diaper on,
Hmm.
and the next morning I deleted it because he didn't look the same way that I remembered him looking.
Yeah.
Why? Why did I delete it? Like that was that was one of the only pictures you will ever have of your son, and you deleted it because you in that moment. And I remember you sent me actually a picture that was really similar to Kate, and I like studied it
Hmm.
with almost envy. And that isn't that weird? Like I was just like but it brought me so much like sadness, deep sadness for you and me. But like I was like, there. That was exactly how Letley looked. And it brought me comfort because I had deleted that picture
Mm-hmm.
of like this perfect little body, just this perfect little person.
Yeah. Not a scratch on him, not anything.
Oh, he
I
was
know
so
I look
perfect.
back at that picture. I know exactly which one you're talking about, and
Hmm.
it makes me so angry looking at it. And I think the only reason I maybe still have it, because I have lots with him
Hmm.
dressed and swaddled and his taking
Yeah,
going home outfit and all these
yeah.
things. And it's like, to me, that's my proof that he came out. It's like when the team tries to tell me that he was alive 9 minutes before they sectioned him.
No,
So no,
no,
no, he wasn't. And that is
no.
my proof to make me feel not
Yeah.
crazy. It's like
Hmm. Well,
somebody
you
doesn't
asked me because
somebody
like,
doesn't look
did
like that.
Letley look like this? And I was like, yes, he did. Yeah.
Like that's my proof.
Hmm.
And
It is 100%.
I if I didn't have all of this, I would feel crazy.
Hmm.
But I have a couple OBs that I'm really close with and stuff too. And same thing, I've sent it to them multiple times over the years, and I'm like, tell me that I am right. Like, look
Yeah.
at this baby, and what would your assessment be? Like,
You
I
know, well,
just,
because you also have that medical
yeah,
side, right? And that's, I think, the hardest
yes,
part about being a mom and a nurse and like separating the two.
yeah.
And you can't in this circumstance.
And I
And
feel
yet
a
I
lot
feel
of
like,
guilt
and
in
I
that
feel like
way.
they expected
Yeah,
you to be a nurse during your labor.
yeah. And I now, like in the moment, obviously I was not. I was just a mom in labor. But now I'm like, why wasn't I my nurse that day? Like, why wasn't I doing my own assessment on my body? But I just couldn't talk. I couldn't say what I was thinking because I was laying there thinking I was going to die. I'm like,
Hmm.
well, this is it. Like, I've never felt anything like this. I mean, he died, so naturally I'm going to go too because that's my
Yeah,
baby. And I played that game a lot in my head after of being like, I want to be with him so badly.
me too.
And I remember laying on the OR bed and like seeing things I'd never seen before. And I'm like, I think I'm like going to go. And
Yeah.
then I woke up and then I came to it with sobbing and just seeing this white ball. I'm like, oh my God. And then even after, I'm like, I just want to so badly be with him, but I also have a daughter, and I
Hmm.
have to be. I don't even think I necessarily thought about being a wife. I was just like, I
Well, yeah,
have
I
to
know
live
you.
for
Well, you would.
her,
Yeah, your
right?
baby.
Like,
Hmm.
and my heart was in two different places, plus the hormones, plus the grief. It
Yeah.
was the most fucked up thing
Plus, your
I've ever
body then
been through.
wanting to breastfeed this baby that you no longer have. The
Don't even
devastation
get
of
me
your
started.
milk. Oh, right? That was something that I put in those legacy boxes was something to help dry your milk up because there wasn't such a thing. Like it was like,
Mhm. Now they have like a
oh,
medication you can take to
hmm,
dry it up, right? And
I will never eat cabbage. I will never eat cabbage because it brings me back to frozen cabbage on
mhm.
my weary, broken body and broken heart. It was just, I know, it just like, I don't know. And like how you said, like, just like them, like, what do you mean? Like, I can't come in the van with him?
Yeah, I'm
And
like, "Oh, so you're gonna
we,
take us home?" Like, is
yeah,
that what's
we
gonna
had made,
happen?
wait, we had
I
made
mean,
the decision not to see Letley again. And mm, like, then Jared said, well, maybe you'll want to see him again on the day, like, of his funeral. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I want to remember him how we remember him. And he was like, okay, well, why don't I wait until we get him back from his his autopsy, which is like I
mhm,
don't even like the word.
yeah,
Um, and I was like, okay. And then Jer said, I don't I don't really think maybe you should see him.
yeah,
I remember like the heaviness of that, like why? Because he was perfect, right? Like why? Why? And so my science part of my brain knew why, but my
mhm,
mom side was like, I'm sorry, but I have to.
yeah,
I have to see him again. And like how you said, like your husband had to like physically like take the box of, and
mhm,
I, we met Jer at the cemetery where we had his burial. And he was like, you guys like meet me there before all of your family and stuff and have some time with him. And we got to like put stuff in with him and all of those things. We all know it, right? If you've lived
Yeah.
it. But I couldn't leave him.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan was like, I couldn't, like, I was just kissing him over and over and over again. And it was like, how do you leave,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know. I just don't know how you leave them. And then, yeah, tucking him in and putting him in the ground. And I think that those are things that people, like, how come they can't stop talking about it? How come they can't get over it? If you're somebody who hasn't had to bury your child, you should never, ever have an opinion
Mm-hmm.
because it
It
is
literally changes your brain chemistry.
100%.
Like, I
You
remember, yeah.
completely change into a completely different person. And for like a very long time. You know how they're
Yeah.
constantly talking about like flamingos and getting your pink back?
Yeah.
I think
I'm
it's
still
the
waiting
same.
on mine.
Oh, I feel like it's just like, I think as like a mom, in general, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But as a lost mom, you're just like, yeah, like physically, emotionally, mentally. Like I always say, I have a heart, like a Letley sized shape broken off in my heart, and it will never ever not be there. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that it won't ever fill because he was real.
Yeah. Nothing
And
can
that's
fill it, right?
I think that's the reality of like stillbirth or child loss in general is that we have to go through something that like people don't understand the depth of, right? Uh, like our son has, a monument, a headstone
Mm-hmm.
because he's there.
Yeah.
Or
I'm,
ashes, right? Like
yeah.
everybody does it differently, and like I think you just do what you can in the moment, right? Like I remember even you like after Cade passed and you and I were messaging back and forth, and I remember being like, man, she's so full of grace. And then I'm like, I just am so worried for her because anger is gonna hit. I am so worried for her because the devastation of like the simple fact that like nothing is okay is going to hit. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember the day that it did hit, and you messaged me and you were like, I'm not okay. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're not. And it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
And
You're in
like,
a fight or flight for so long, right? And I remember,
oh,
yeah,
so
getting
long.
home and I should be, having a nap because of my sleepless night. And instead, my husband's like, please get dressed. We have to be at the funeral home in 5 minutes.
Hmm.
I'm like, what? And then
Yeah.
her handing me this book and being like, what color casket do you want? I'm like, sorry? Um, I don't know. Like,
Right? I'm so
and
grateful to her who did
yeah,
that stuff for us. He made
like,
those decisions for us. I can literally never thank him because
yeah,
he went out every night to tuck him in
yeah, I
and
know.
like
I just
give
think
his
about that
body
too.
love because we couldn't. I'm forever grateful for.
I remember getting to the funeral that day and walking into the family room, and immediately I was so annoyed because I didn't do his hair. He had a mohawk. Why is his hair
Yeah,
flat?
yeah,
And my natural instinct, I was fixing his sleeper. I was
yeah,
swaddling him, unswaddling him, styling his hair, like all of these things. And just like, I couldn't stop touching him. And then
yeah,
I let my family say goodbye. And then the funeral home director was like, there's no right or wrong answer right now, but do you want to hold him? I was like, yes, immediately. And then she put him in my arms, and like I could have broke glass with that sob. I can still remember it, and I
yeah,
remember some of my family getting up and having to leave the room, so like I
yeah,
just can't do it. And then we walked in, yeah, to the church. My husband did like his speech, and then they were like, okay, we can say your final goodbye. And he was like on the table up front. Like everybody had been crying, but I don't think I heard it.
yeah,
And then I like knelt down and I gave him a kiss and I just started sobbing and I was just
yeah,
apologizing to him.
yeah,
And that's when I heard like the cries break out.
yeah,
And they're like, "Can we take him now?" And they were waiting for me to give like the
yeah,
nod.
yeah.
I'm like, "How?"
How?
Like,
How? I know.
That's
That
impossible.
it is.
And
It's, and I
and
think that like, again, unless you've experienced it, that's it for us, right? Like
yeah,
we didn't live a long life that you can like, you know, understand like, okay, they lived a good long life. We can say goodbye to their body now. It was
yeah,
like, those are the knees that we're supposed to kiss better.
yeah,
Those are the cheeks that we're supposed to kiss, and those are the bodies we're supposed to be able to snuggle and like take care of
yeah.
forever.
I even
And they're gone.
remember, yeah, the night or the morning of my wedding, the night before. And I remember just crying because I came to the realization that I may never get the mother-son dance at a wedding. I'm like, why is my wedding so emotional? But I postponed my original wedding date
Yeah,
because of him. I was pregnant
yeah,
with him and I needed him to be at this wedding.
yeah.
And then to be like, you're not here. And also, I'll never be at your wedding. And that was like, I didn't even realize until my wedding came around that I was like, oh, just another thing we lost.
I,
Like,
yeah. I literally can't do slideshows.
no, I went to a baby
You
shower of
know,
my NICU friend's baby and I was like, the music started and I was so,
I
I was
can't.
like,
I
I
can't. I don't.
can't.
I like. I remember actually, like, yeah, like, well, just in general, grads, weddings, funerals, slideshows. He will never have a slideshow.
Yep.
I guess maybe now I lay me down to sleep, who came and took pictures, which I am forever grateful for, gave us a little CD with a song on it. The song was beautiful, and I remember showing it to my sister, who has like I say, she was my rock. She was like, just it. Well, she's everything. But she, you know, I remember her seeing that slideshow of him, and that was like, she really broke down, and it was like, right, we're all missing him.
Hmm.
Every single one of us is devastated. And yeah, so, but yeah, slideshows, man. I cannot. I
No.
simply can't do them. Like, they just, I love them. I love seeing people's lives and every moment of it, but I will be the one that is sobbing for 10 minutes after it. And not just because of myself, but like because of the life well lived, or the life that was cut too short, or. But like, they just, they're just, I don't know how to explain it. Something that is, I guess, a trigger.
Yeah. I was at a
Hmm.
funeral a couple weeks ago for my friend's mom and the pictures of like the grandkids with their grandma. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, like our moms are
yeah.
not going to have those pictures with those grandbabies, and
Hmm.
just, and I remember laying in the hospital. I was like, yes, we obviously need a celebration of life. That's what we do when people die. Like there was no other option in my head.
Yeah,
And so we planned it. And then the funeral home called me a few days after we had like posted his obituary and everything. And she was like,
I remember that day for you.
we need, yeah, nothing could have prepared me for that. I thought I was
No,
prepared. And
yeah,
no,
you
when
were
I
not.
logged onto
No, I
Facebook
remember
and
you.
seen that, because I had a group in my living room and they were like, Lex, it's up. I was like, okay, here we go. Because we had only told our closest people
Hmm.
until then. And after that came out, the funeral home called us. They're like, we're going to have to move the funeral. Like, there's not going to be enough room. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, there's going to be a lot of people there. I'm like, okay, but nobody knew him. Like,
Hmm.
only our parents and one of my doctor friends met him.
Yeah,
That was it. She was like, you're like, just what, like, wait. And hundreds of people came through that door. And it was like, you don't actually realize like how many people are anticipating this arrival or
right.
are impacted by a loss until
Hmm.
it happens. And then I'm like, this little boy who didn't spend a minute alive on this earth impacted all of these lives.
I know.
And I'm like, that is amazing that you did that. And you weren't even here to put a footprint.
I know.
And yeah, I remember one of my well, she's not a friend anymore, but saying like, not to me, but I don't understand why we're having this. Like, what's there to celebrate? He wasn't even here for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what? Like, there was no other option in my mind.
Mm-mm. See, for me, I think because like I literally couldn't make a decision on anything. Like I remember when Jared got there that day to talk about his funeral, and I just started yelling, leave, go, I can't. And he was like, okay. I remember him being like, okay, I can go, or I can
Yep,
sit, and we can just talk. And it
yep,
was like, I, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want this to be real. And again, you know how I said, like, I feel like we do what is like best in those moments, or you do your best because you've never experienced anything like it before. But like, even for like our family, like we called them in to meet him. And there was a couple family members who didn't feel like they could.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, no, you have to. Like, you have to see him. He's perfect. And so they did come in. And I believe that the two of them, I don't think that, I don't remember if they held him. And again, like, I think that that part of it was like, I said to my mom once, like, how long were you guys in there for? She was like, maybe 5 minutes.
mm-hmm,
My mom, Jordan's mom, his sisters, my sister, my dad, his dad, like, I know there was a couple that didn't hold him, but those who did maybe held him for 30 seconds.
mm-hmm,
And funeral wise, we had just who was there, like Jordan's sisters had a trip planned and they said, like, go enjoy, like you can't like stop life. And we ended up having the funeral while they were gone, I'm pretty sure. And again, like it's so weird what your trauma brain does for your like memory, but it was such a like we didn't have a funeral for everybody. Like we didn't have a funeral, a celebration of his life because I couldn't make a decision. And when I knew that, like when after you did it, I was like, man. And again, it's like those things that you like in hindsight, every person that walked through the door and sat in my chair as like a hairstylist would have shown up. Every one
mm-hmm,
of our friends would have shown up. And I think that it would have also helped people understand because like we were the first people of our friend group to not only get married but have kids. Like we were, like I remember one of George's friends coming up to the window in the truck. Like I think it was like a couple weeks after we had Letley, and he's like, "Hey, how are you? You good?" I remember looking at him like I like looked like I had been through hell and back, and I was like, "No, I'm not good. I'm not good."
What kind of stupid question is that?
But like, you know what I mean? Like like it was like, again, did people in that point of our lives just believe that we had a miscarriage? And I think that that's part of it. Like, it was like why I felt this strong need to talk about like stillbirth
Mm-hmm,
is still birth. We still gave birth to these babies and they were perfect.
yep,
They were human beings and they were our children.
mm-hmm,
He was my son, our first son.
yep.
It
Like,
was,
that's
and
part of the
again, like,
reason.
and I
Yeah,
don't mean that to downplay how much a miscarriage hurts for everybody who's experienced them.
yeah,
They are devastating, but it felt like people thought that like I was just okay. And like even like why wasn't I returning back to work? Like I was I was supposed to be off of work now for a year with my
mm-hmm,
baby.
yep,
I can't make small talk with people. I can't be one on one with them for 2 hours straight and not talk about life, my real life and the
mm-hmm.
hell that I was living.
That's the
And it was
only
like,
thing I
yeah,
could talk about was
I
him
know.
and the birth. That's it. I was
Yep.
not able to talk about anything else. It just wouldn't come out of
No,
my
and
mouth.
you
I
do like
couldn't.
you think of like your friends after and the scenario that like some of them can get behind and like really support and help you through, even though they haven't experienced it, or the people that literally can't.
Yeah.
Somebody that says like, well, why would they have a celebration of life? He didn't live. Well, because he did live. He was alive in your tummy for
Yeah.
9 10 months just about, and they're real.
Yeah. I think
They're
it's part of the
human
reason I
beings.
needed to have the open casket at the not the wedding, the
Yeah.
funeral. They asked me, they were like, "Do you want like the viewing or whatever?" I said, "Yes." I needed people to know that he was a baby.
Hmm.
Like, I need you to lay eyes on him so you
Hmm.
understand the
Yeah.
magnitude of what I am putting in the back of this car now.
Yeah.
And the day we got the call that his ashes were ready and the urn was ready, I was so angry when Paul
Hmm.
walked through that door with that. I call it a stupid blue bear. Obviously, it's one of the most important items in my
Hmm.
home, but I still look at
How
it and
is
I'm like,
that?
I shouldn't have that. Like,
No.
why is that on my mantle? Or why do I have this stuffed bear that people brought me after he passed? I should have him, not this stupid bear.
No.
Like, everything brought so much anger. And I even remember waking up that day of the celebration of life. And part of it was like any other day. And then another part of it was like, okay, at 4 p.m., I'm about to go see him for the very last time. I still had to
Hmm.
shower. I still had to put my postpartum underwear on. I had to
Hmm.
put my heels on, my dress. I had to go get my hair curled.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a spray tan because I was black and blue from the amount of IVs and everything I had in. I couldn't put makeup on. So I was
No.
like, for the love of God, just give me a spray tan. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember being there, but I remember being there. I only
Yeah.
actually remember the
Isn't
moments
that
with
the
him.
weirdest thing?
I don't remember anything else. Like, I have to ask people. I'm like, "Were you there?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I
"I don't
know.
mean this in a rude way,
Yeah.
but were you there?"
I know. Like that's what I mean. Like
Like,
I Jordan's sisters are like incredibly like they're my sisters. They've been part of my
mhm,
life for almost 20 years. And I'm like, were they there? No, they went on their trip. Like
mhm,
my brain literally can't
no,
remember things. Like, do I remember the music that we played? No.
no, I have no
Other than
idea.
Ho Hey, like Ho Hey is Letley's song. And if I need to hear that song because I need to feel close to him, that song will come on. Doesn't matter how many years it's been since Ho Hey was a popular song. I get that. I get that sign,
I love
which
that.
is
Yeah, one of our
wonderful.
friends had
And
hired,
Bumblebee.
yeah, had hired a photographer for the celebration of life. And a few of my family members were like, "This is just like weird. We don't really understand what to do." I'm like,
Mm,
"Nothing. Like,
just
we're
here.
just, she's not here, but she's
Yeah.
here." And she took pictures of us like walking into the church.
Yep.
And there's pictures of me like grabbing and holding onto people's hands because I was trying to
Yep.
stand.
Yep.
And then,
But like, isn't it
like,
amazing though, like the people that can do that photography. Like I remember asking the
mhm,
lady who did Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. Her name was Robin, and she was incredible. And I remember messaging her after, like, how can you do this?
yeah,
Like, what made you get into it? And she said, I think, like, I remember correctly that she had said that her grandpa was dying, and she started to take pictures and realized that in death there was also peace,
yeah,
and there is peace in a lot, like I mean, devastation in all of the pictures from Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, obviously, but there was also peace and pride,
mhm,
right? Like I remember when they wheeled us down the hallway, wheeled me down the hallway to where our family was waiting after Letley was born, and they had to do some tests and stuff. And like we walked down the hallway, and like I said to them, "We have a son," and like seeing Jordan's dad break, right?
mhm,
Like there that his first grandson. And but we were so proud. I remember like they were coming in and doing blood work and I was like, "Did you see our baby?
mhm.
Isn't he perfect?" It like and I think back to it thinking like I wonder if they thought that I was like borderline crazy, but like he
Oh
was
yeah, I
so
had Kate on my
perfect.
chest too, and they came to do my blood work, and I was just like, "It's my baby," like
And
they were like,
I know.
"Okay." I'm like, "Well, again, if you don't understand, consider yourself lucky, right?"
Yeah.
I remember my dad breaking too, and because I called them immediately after he was born once I was in recovery, and I'm like, he goes, I knew something was wrong because you didn't FaceTime, you called me. And he had come home from work early because he planned to come meet him that day because I was like obviously having him
Mhm.
that day.
Mhm.
And he was like, the moment I seen that it was a call, not a FaceTime, I knew something was wrong. And then I was like, you need to come to Wayne right now. And then they came back the next day and I was like, do you want to hold him? And he was like, I didn't think you would like give him up. I'm like, you can only hold him for a couple minutes. Then I have to take him back. But even to like let Jayla and Paul hold him, I was like, what? But I'm like,
He's
okay,
not
yeah,
here.
this is your baby too. But
Yeah.
he was just like, if he's on my chest, he's still a part of me. We're still attached.
Oh, right.
And
I just so wish, so, so,
yeah,
so wish I would have spent more time. I'm so glad that you did. I mean, it's
mm,
never enough. Never. Not even
oh
for a
God,
second
no,
is it enough.
no. I would have never let him go if Paul didn't essentially make me because,
Hmm. That was
like,
Jordan.
his,
So when
yeah,
I was kissing Letley on the lips and
yeah,
just kept kissing him and kissing him, kissing him in that in the back of that vehicle that Jer had for us to visit him, and George was like, I need you to come. And I remember being like, no. And he's like, people are getting here. It's time. It's time. And I was like, no. I
mm-hmm,
remember kissing his lips and kissing his lips just to say, I love you.
mm-hmm,
And it was like, they know they're not here. Like, I knew he wasn't there anymore, but I couldn't. How do you kiss your baby goodbye one last time? And Jordan was literally like peeling me out of that.
yeah,
And like, just, you just wanted to, okay, well, then just lay me on the ground, lay
mm-hmm,
me there with him. And I
yeah,
have. I don't know how many times throughout the years I have just like went to that spot and just laid down just to be close.
yeah. I know that I stare at Kate's bear so often. In the beginning, I would snuggle it. I haven't picked it up in like probably a year. I can't because I think if I do, it's like almost accepting and like being
Hmm.
like, it's okay that I have this bear. And I don't often let myself break. And I think that that's part of my problem.
Yeah.
And if I were to sit down and snuggle him, oh, that would be a breaking point, right? And it's just like hard to kind of create that boundary of protecting myself too.
Hmm.
And like, it's not okay that he's not here. And I
No.
couldn't even be the one, like, I told a few people, sent out a text, but like, I made my parents tell our family and stuff like that. I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't.
Oh yeah, no.
And then they tried to call me. They're like, we can't hear you. I'm like, I can't speak.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know
No.
what there is to say right now. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing I could say. Or don't tell me it's okay. Don't.
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
throw my phone and smash it so no one can talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and like the heaviness in my arms after, I didn't
Hmm.
expect that. It was almost
Yeah.
heavier than carrying around Jayla right now. I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is not how it's supposed to be, but my body doesn't understand. I'm
No.
still doing the same things that I did when I had a baby at home. My body's healing in
Hmm.
the exact same way physically, obviously to a
I
bit more
know.
extent with all the trauma of my
Yeah.
internal organs.
Yeah.
But like my mind understood, but my heart, I still don't think it believes he'll never be home.
I
But
know.
like, how do you convince your heart that your baby's not coming home?
I think that like in time, like I say, it's Bentley will be turning 12, and it's just so evident that he's not here now
Mm-hmm.
because I'm watching all of the kids his age and like cousins and stuff, and I'm like grateful to be able to see them grow up because it's like I've always said it's like a looking glass, but like things like the Christmas play, oh,
It's all those things that you don't necessarily think maybe
yeah,
you're
the
going
things
to
that
be a
you're like
trigger.
end up a trigger that is,
Yeah. All of a sudden I'm sitting here sobbing and I'm like, why? Like, but
yeah, yeah, like literally,
bodies are so
the
funny.
Christmas play, I was like, no, why do I don't want to feel this way. And then Mayor started to cry and I was like, I need to get out of here. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, thank goodness, because I couldn't do it. And it was like, I mean, I see them lots and I'm so grateful to see them. And yet would be in grade six. Grade six.
Mm-hmm.
And my body still misses him to my core.
Yeah.
We get a family picture done, and I'm like, what would it be like to have this like almost 12-year-old and this almost 2-year-old boys on like I have like these like daydreams of what life should look like. And I mean, like, it's not that like I'm like hanging on to something that I know is never going to be there. It's just a daydream of like all your hopes and wishes and dreams of like 2 boys and 3 girls, the boys being the bookends of the family, and just, I guess, just knowing him, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't you just wish you just knew? I
I
can like
do.
still anticipate what I know Letley's personality would have been like, which I feel like it's because you're their mom.
Yeah. You know them best, regardless, right?
I knew him. I knew his personality. He was so routine. And I mean, that's why I knew he had passed.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many people had said that, or like the doctors and stuff, like, lots of people, it's like takes sometimes a solid day or whatever, not hours, but it was hours. I was like, well, it was as soon as I woke up. I was like, it was 7:30 in the morning. I felt him. Jordan went to work. Could see you later. And Letley did this weird thing that he did in my tummy sometimes. Like you could almost hear it. Like it was this tactile, like feeling of his hand. And I was like, oh, hey, buddy. And then I fell asleep and I woke back up probably about 9 because I was supposed to be resting because I was on bed rest. And I was like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, sweetie. Because that's what I called him. Hey, sweetie. And like nothing. I'm like, this is too weird. And then, yeah, like I said, I did all of the things and even like went into town at that point. Like Jordan's auntie worked at a clinic still, like one of the doctor's offices before that doctor had passed. And I would always go in and Doppler. It just made me feel relaxed. And
Yeah.
I went in and I couldn't find it. And she couldn't find it, Jordan's auntie. And she was like, well, I feel like I keep kind of catching it, but I'm just not 100% sure. I think maybe like going into your doctor. So my mom at that point was with me and drove me to Viking. And I had a friend who had been through it years previous. And she had always said that, like they went and got another Doppler. Like, oh, like this one must have, the batteries must be off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this one's batteries must be off. And just like, well, Jordan got a phone call, and like again, you like separate those two stories, right? Like, what was I dealing with? What was he dealing with in those moments? And it's like, yeah, we got like the doctor walked in, and he had like a a student doctor with him, and he, he tried with the Doppler, and then he brought over the ultrasound machine and put it on, and then you could see nothing. And I just remember him saying like, I'm sorry, but your baby has died. And I just, like, I remember, like, literally, like, taking my glasses off and throwing them. I don't know why. I didn't want to see anymore.
Yeah.
And being like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, do a C-section. He was just here. And they just, there was nothing. There was no emergency. There was no hastiness. And even, like, when we got, like, so they sent us to Camrose because Edmonton was full. And when we got there, like, we had been, like, told that we would have another ultrasound to confirm, and like we both prayed all the way there, and both thought like, no way, it was just a mistake. And we got there, and there was just these pamphlets, freaking pamphlets on the like, like beside the bed, what to do when your baby dies. And it was like these steps of like, call the funeral home, like basically braced for impact. Like these
I
like
refuse to even look at our paperwork. I'm like,
right.
I'm
Like, and
not
I
writing my
remember,
name on that.
throwing it, like
Nope,
pushing it away, being
I'm not
like,
writing
our
on
baby
that.
didn't, our baby didn't die. Nobody has told us for sure that our baby has died.
Mhm.
They said that they think he has died, but that we're waiting for confirmation. So this nurse comes in and she's like, okay, well, we're going to start your induction. And I was like, forget it. Get the doctor in here.
Mhm.
Like, no way. And the doctor came in and he was like, I'm so sorry. Like we thought that you had, so he brought the ultrasound in, wheeled it in, and Jordan was there with me this time and he turned on the screen and he said, like you can see your baby here. You can see his outline and you can see that there is no heartbeat, no blood flow, and like explained everything and then said, can I pray with you? Okay. And so he prayed and he just talked about the induction and I said, like, I just want a cesarean. I don't want to do this. And he really, really suggested the reason why I go through it was to, first of all, if I wanted to have more babies, second, the connection, needing to connect with your baby because of what had happened. And yeah, so it was like everything was so silent. And then it was like a very long labor. Like I think it was 22 hours, 20 hours. It was long. And finally they broke my water because this amazing anesthesiologist said, break her water. Like you wanted her to have this vaginal birth, break her water and give her the chance. And they didn't want to because of infection and stuff, right? Because he had passed and he was like, hang the antibiotics and break her water.
Yeah.
He advocated so hard for me because at that point they were like, we're just going to put you through a section. And I was like,
Yeah.
like, it was just like this up and down. And yeah, he advocated and we did. My water broke, or they broke my water, and I think he was born maybe an hour later. And when I went through transition, I screamed the loudest screams I have ever screamed in my life. And it was because I didn't have to be silent about how much it hurt,
Mhm.
because it wasn't my body. As much as my body hurt and I was transitioning and my heart was so broken.
Mhm.
And I had to then, at 23 years old, give birth for the first time to death. And yet, like I say, we were so surrounded by peace and pride and I guess hormones really, right? Like we got to ride that like high of, look at this perfect little boy.
I
And
feel
like
like
I
as
say,
moms, that's all we see. It's just
yeah,
the perfectness of them, right? And I'm
yeah.
so
And like
grateful
really
that.
truly, like I always ask that like to Siobhan and stuff, like, was he as perfect as I thought? She was like, truly. Like she said, I had never seen a still baby that looked
Mhm.
like him. And he was perfect and so handsome. And I think to myself, like, what would he have? What would his hair be like? Like, would it still have auburn flecks in it? Would he have been more like Mayor and Scout, or would he, like it's just like I think that I like have like wonder dreams of like who he would be. What color are his eyes? Did only the boys get my eyes? You know what I mean? Like Mayor has his eyes are turning my color, which is like so neat because the girls are so much their dad.
Mhm.
And like Mayor looks the most like me and Letley looked a lot like Mayor and it's like I wonder, I wonder. And I am grateful for the promise of heaven to know that I will get to meet him and know him. But it doesn't change that those wonders sometimes also turn into triggers, and those
Mhm.
triggers turn into tears, and that pain is like a roller coaster of life. We're just like, it's this bittersweet life that we live of like, I wish he was here.
I
There's
always say
literally
to
no
my
other way, like
I always
other
say to
word.
my friends, I'm like, I am on a roller coaster ride that I did not buy a ticket for. Like,
No,
I
at
didn't
all.
pay admission. I don't want to be here. I'm here
No.
against my will. And it
Mhm.
doesn't end. Like, where's the
Yeah.
end?
No end.
Does the end exist? You know, like,
No. And I think again, like it's a weird feeling as you get further into it and farther away from them and yet closer to them, if that makes sense, right? Like
it
you're
does.
I I think that eventually those wonders, those hopes, those dreams become something that you kind of look forward to, like like spending time wondering and thinking about them when it's not triggering and just like daydreaming of like his hair, his eyes, his smile. Would he be a cowboy? Would he be a hockey player? What, like, I
I feel
mean,
like
like,
you'd be a good mix of both.
I think so too. I think so too. And I think that he'd be wildly handsome and probably have a, little elementary school girlfriend now. And it's like, what?
I know.
How is this our life? And yet it's our life.
It's so crazy that he'll be 12 in 12
12.
days, and he passed on the 12th.
He passed on the 12th and
Like
was born on the 13th, which is like
12,
even
12,
weirder,
12. Yeah.
right? Yeah, his birthday's the 13th of February,
Mm,
and yet the 12th is the day that like, and it's weird how your body goes through those things. Like every year on the 11th, I can like remember that that was the last normal day. That was the last day I had with him that felt like I remember being so stressed and going to the doctor and having, like talking to him about like what like I had, like I kept having like prodromal labor or like Braxton Hicks that
mhm.
lasted 10 hours. Why does this keep happening? Oh, you're first time mom, like this can go on for weeks. And I remember being like, weeks? Like I just need him to come now. If
Yeah.
it's okay for him to come now. He had like a heart rate of I think 156 and getting in the bath that night and being like, okay, and like chatting to him as I got in the bath, reading him a story, feeling so relaxed. And then he died. And
It
it's like,
makes no sense.
why?
It's those pieces that, like, you remember exactly what the heart rates were. You
I know.
remember exactly the pattern that it sounded like on the NST monitor.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me. Our stories are obviously several years apart, 10 years to be exact. So when we first connected, we were obviously in very different
Hmm.
phases of the journey, but how much of our journeys like kind of cross over, like just simple things of like we also had a student doctor that day who was in
Hmm.
the room when no heartbeat was found. The heart rate that was found before we were rushed into the OR was 158 beats per minute. However, it was mine.
Hmm. Of course it
You
was.
know, there's so many, yeah, I don't
Variables,
know. Yeah,
overlaps. I think that again, you just like have to find gratitude in the things that bring you some peace,
yeah,
and then you have to find gratitude. Otherwise, you'll die.
yeah, you
You'll
will.
die of a broken
You
heart.
will.
And I mean it like you
Yeah,
yourself. Like I died the day Letley died. Like I
yeah,
can willingly say that like that person has never been the same.
I agree.
Won't ever be the same. And not that I haven't been able to find joy. I chase joy. I mean, look, we have 5 kids,
You have
4
a
here.
house full of
We have a
joy.
house full. We chase joy and chaos clearly because we're a little
Yes.
bit nuts. But um, I really do believe that like you have to keep living. You have to choose joy. You
Hmm.
have to choose to carry on with them in your heart because otherwise you just die with them and they
Yeah.
wouldn't want
No. Which is a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around.
that. Yeah,
Wanting to be
it
two
is.
places at once.
Oh yeah.
One very physically impossible place that doesn't allow you to be here
Yeah,
with all
exactly.
the things that matter, right? What was I gonna say? Oh, something that's come up for me a lot lately is looking at Case and being like, if Cade wouldn't have died, would we have you?
Mm,
Or are you here solely because he's not? And that's like really hard for me to wrap my head around too, because I think maybe if we had a boy, I wouldn't have necessarily been able to convince my husband to have a third.
mm-hmm,
But because of our circumstances, now we have this beautiful living boy.
mm-hmm,
And I often say to him, "Oh, you're my favorite boy." And then like I want to throw up because I'm like,
mm-hmm.
"No." And then so this morning he's
Uh,
like, "You're my favorite Earthside boy because your brother in heaven is also my favorite boy." And I'm like, "Okay, that feels a bit better." But I
yeah,
just like said it without thinking necessarily because, well, you are my favorite boy on this earth,
yeah,
And like, just so much guilt, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, kid, sorry," like, and
yeah.
apologizing to the sky,
I
like,
feel like,
after
yeah,
we
I
had
know.
our thing last week,
I
I'm
feel like
literally
with
out for
you
a walk
guys,
being like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Why the fuck am I having to talk to this guy?
I know.
Like, someone
I
shut
think
him
like
down."
for you, I feel like it must be tricky sometimes, like their names being like. Did you call Cade lots?
Yep, and a
Yeah.
few of my friends would text me, "How's Cade doing?"
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, you mean Cade?"
Yeah.
They're like, "What did I say?" I'm like, "Cade." They're like, "Oh my
I
god, I'm so
know.
sorry." I'm like, "No, it's
There has
okay."
been so many times that I've had to like because I don't want to get it wrong, but they're so close.
Yeah.
The other day, I think it was like 2 days ago. Like I've never called Mayor Letley. Like their names are obviously so different, but I always call Mayor MJ.
Mhm.
And I was like laying him down, and like for a long time I'd call Letley like LDM, like just if I was like
Mhm.
like yeah talking about him or whatever. And I don't know why, but I laid him down and he was on my lap and I was playing with his hair and I was like, "Oh, you're so cute." And I was chatting with him and then I was like, something, something. And then I was like, LDM. And I was like, that was so weird. But again, I feel like it was just like a little kiss from like, I'm right here too.
Yeah, because it just comes out of you so
Yeah.
naturally, right?
Like it was such a weird, like it was like, hmm,
Yeah. I know,
I
and I
guess the
very
nervous
seldom
one
actually call case. It's usually like queso or caser, and
yeah,
then it's really because he's Case Cade, but I
yeah,
only think I've actually ever said his full name twice out loud to
yeah,
him. I'm like, I need to get used to it. Like last night, I was like, "Oh, are you my Case Cade?" Like, but it's so hard for me to say that second name because I should have a Cade and I should have
yeah.
a Case,
I think
like
that we really contemplated Letley a few times as a middle name, like even for the
mhm,
girls. And I was stressed about it because I am like a second name user, so like Reese
mhm.
Mabel. But anytime I ever got my second name used, it was usually if I was doing something troublesome. So I was worried that if we went like Mayor Letley, that he would be always like getting in trouble with his brother's name instead. So I was like, okay, that's why we went, yeah, with, well, Jordan's Papa Jack, who was like
Yeah,
my favorite person
he's so
who
sweet.
really helped me with my faith with God. That's our Mayor Jack. I would have called him Jack. I love the name Jack, but
It's so
MJ,
beautiful. I
yeah,
know I'm a big first and like second name user too. It's always
yeah,
Jayla Ray. Like I have to stop
yeah,
myself at Jayla. I'm like, you're
yeah,
Jayla, not Jayla Ray.
yes,
But it
yes.
just flows, right? Well, thank you so much for today. I feel like I cried a lot more than I ever anticipated, but obviously I needed it. And it was, oh
Same.
God, kicking stuff. I appreciate you so much. I know you were nervous and I hope it was okay for your heart too. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Please take a moment and on whatever app you're listening to us on, press that follow button to stay up to date with all future episodes. If you or someone you know are interested in being a guest on the Beyond the Birth Story podcast or a sponsor, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at Beyond the Birth Story podcast and send a message or fill out that contact form. I would love to connect with you. As always, remember to be gentle, kind, and hold space for yourself when you need it.